Welcome back to the Ball and Breakfast podcast, everybody. We've got another rendition of CFP football matchups coming up here for the national championship game for college football. Obviously got a couple nice matchups on New Year's Eve that'll set up an interesting title game. We've got the Georgia Bulldogs, who've been the number one team on top basically this entire season. And the somewhat underdog TCU Horned Frogs, of Texas. So, first we're just going to kind of reintroduce Taylor Moss to the show. We had him here the last time we shot the CFP semifinals. We did the bio there, but did definitely want to plug that Taylor and his friend Nick Collins had basically started a podcast called The Constant Quest. It's a lot to do with personal growth. I think they'll touch on, mental health topics, kind of pushing the envelope as we can as humans to put ourselves out there and basically try new things. I'll kick it over to Taylor real quick to just, plug it even further. But if you're on Apple Podcasts, perhaps they'll drop on other forums too. But check out The Constant Quest with Taylor Moss.
Yeah, no, I appreciate it, Pat. I mean, you kind of touched on it, right? Our whole thing was just me and one of my buddies had good kind of deeper conversations about life. And he's actually in a grad school program, and we had to film one. And by the end of it, this filming for his class, we just kind of looked at each other and we're like, should we be doing a podcast? If this just felt like two good friends having a conversation, why not just film it and kind of put it out there as a podcast, and maybe somebody else could benefit from it. So yeah, man, that's kind of where it started. And, we got a lot of ideas, but it's really just, two dudes having a really open and honest conversation, which we were talking about that. And I don't think it happens enough. Guys kind of tend to bottle things up. So I won't go into too much deeper than that, but that's kind of the spirit of it. And if anybody wants to check it out, we'd love to have you view it, because we're not trying to have a podcast to retire. We're just trying to spread good vibes and get good conversations out there. Because I know mental health, particularly, with everything that's gone on in the last few years, it's just a challenge for a lot of people. So
yeah, I'm definitely glad that we're starting to talk about these topics. I feel like for our generation, at least, it's becoming, the new normal, and hopefully, all that continues. Maybe you can touch on, generations above us, definitely below. But I think, getting that started and having a platform for it will definitely draw a lot of interest, as it already has. So I've already listened to the first episode. Definitely strikes a chord with me, what I care about, things I think about on a daily basis. So if you guys are out there, check it out, and we'll leave it there. But I guess looking at the semifinals, the first matchup we had, TCU going up, against Michigan. We broke that one down. All three of us chose Michigan. I think we were looking at lower scores than what actually ended up happening. But the final score of the game was 51-45 TCU, kind of in an upset, a little bit of a shocker. But Wayne, why don't we start with you? What did you take away from that matchup, and what did you see in TCU?
Yeah, well, when I saw Donovan Edwards, I think he the first play of the game ran for 54 yards. I was like, okay, this thing's over, because I think that's what their whole thing was. It's like, oh, that's a 3-3-5 defense. Let's just run right through them. And they have one of the best offensive lines, and Donovan Edwards is just an explosive back. So I think we all thought that they were just going to be able to run through them, but that was not the case. JJ McCarthy, he threw 2 pick sixes, so that definitely didn't help the case. They also won it first drive, right? I think it was on the goal line, that fourth and goal. They tried to do the Philly special and everything, and that did not work out. So a lot of things just did not work out for Michigan early on, and I think that kind of just set the tone for everything. And when you are I think the Cinderella, it's you kind of need some of those breaks, but then also you also got to be, I think, have some momentum early on, right? To kind of give you that confidence that, yeah, we can do this. So, Max Duggan made some plays. I think that was the key thing I saw there. It always seemed like he was about to get sacked, but was able to throw out of it and just prolong the play a little bit. And then, man, Quinton Johnston, that guy is a stud. So, I'm do the Bears, I don't know, draft him? I know we need some D-line up there and everything. You can trade back. That's okay. So I would love somebody. I think any team would love somebody like Quinton Johnston there. So, but I think they just made some plays. Kendrick Miller, I know he got hurt and everything, but the running back came in. Was it DeMercado? came back and kind of picked where Kendrick Miller left off there, and didn't really hit too many strides or didn't miss any strides really there. So I think TCU's defense just came to play. Made a lot of plays. D Winters, like that guy is a stud, it seems like. So I think he'll probably be playing on Sundays. So he looked really good out there. And then was it Tomlinson's nephew, Hodges Tomlinson? I think he made some really good plays there too. So overall, I think it was just a great team. Just a great team game, I think, overall for TCU. And then with Michigan, I feel like they had this hump, and then I know Jim Harbaugh has been saying like, "Oh, I'm going to stay at Michigan," like FYI and all that. But it does make you wonder like what's next for Michigan. But I think going from the TCU standpoint, like great win overall. So yeah.
I definitely thought they played really fast. I think the score ended up being a lot closer than the game, really was at the end of the day. And for them to kind of show out against a top 5 defense that we talked about with Michigan, it's just, definitely came as a surprise. And, Max Duggan, I didn't know he could do that much with his legs, but, with the quarterback in, that kind of fashion, their top running back goes down, their backup, averages 8.8 per carry. And you still got Quentin Johnston and others to, help in the receiving game. It's just, it felt like they had their finger on the pulse the entire game, especially after that, horrible play call by Michigan on the goal line to kind of kick off the game. I thought that was a really weak move. I would have either pounded it or done, some sort of play action to, find an open tight end or something just to, just make a more conservative call, maybe to kick off the game. You're not TCU, you're Michigan. You're the favorite there in that situation. So I'd have been a little bit more aggressive with that call. But overall, I mean, I was shocked, but I also didn't really feel like the game was all that close.
You good with me now? I guess for me, I kind of felt similarly to you, Wayne. It was like I'm go to watch it in a bar, and Donovan Edwards breaks this long run, and that's exactly what went through my head. I was like, well, gosh, I at least wanted to see a good game. And like, unfortunately, it's one play, but I'm like, if they just gashed him for 53 on the first play, what is this going to look like? And I almost wonder how much that played into Michigan's decision to go for it on 4th down. It was like you felt like, well, that's a guaranteed 7. I know he got caught on the run, wherever around the 15 or the 10 or whatever. But you just felt like, oh, that's definitely 7. They're going to punch this in. And I guess I just kind of wondered if they didn't, I don't know, if there wasn't a little bit of like arrogance there, whereas like we just broke this long run, we're going to pound this in, instead of just like honestly maybe just taking 3 points. Because then I think they stopped TCU, and then Michigan gets the ball back, but then Michigan throws a pick 6. And so I don't know, man, it's interesting. I just felt like that was a very unique game. Like TCU looked like they dominated, and certainly you give the defense credit when they make an interception, score a touchdown, but that's a little bit different than an offense like driving all the way down the field on somebody. Just to see like 2 pick 6s in a game, it's kind of crazy. I guess the other thing, it seemed like as I watched that game, you felt like TCU was dominating, and they were, but then, it's like 21-6 at half, and you're like, man, Michigan's getting their butt kicked. And then Michigan comes out and drives all the way down the field, and they've got a chance to score, and they don't. They have to settle for a field goal, and you're still like, all right, it's 21-9. And then I don't know. I don't think they scored again right there, but you just felt like, all right, when's Michigan going to turn it on? And they kind of didn't until I was surprised. I was watching the highlights again today, and Michigan scored like 30 points from the last like 6 minutes in the third through the end of the game. So I was like, that's a crazy number of points, So yeah, it was just a very interesting game, between Michigan kind of having the 2 pick 6s. That overturned call on the goal line was obviously enormous, right? Where the receiver caught it and he went down. And I think most people thought that was a touchdown. I was a little bit surprised that it was overturned. I felt like that was one of those where you'd go with the call on the field, and they overturned it, which I was surprised. And then Michigan kind of literally just gave the ball back to him, right? They tried to hand it off to the fullback and fumble it. So I was actually a little bit surprised that it was as close as it was, considering, I mean, if you look at a team that throws 2 pick 6s, right, and then you just give up 7 points by a matter of inches, like that's 3 touchdowns, and they only lost by 6. So yeah, I was surprised it was that close, to be honest. But yeah, it was a heck of a game, obviously super high scoring. So probably the best overall, before we get into the next game, just combination of the 2 semifinal games. I'm used to the semifinal games being kind of crap. And that was a really great day. So yeah.
No, I definitely agree. Yeah, like all these turnovers that are, and not to foreshadow too much about predictions. I think in the championship game, but it's like was Michigan like were they into it or something? There was just so many opportunities. I feel like that either went by the wayside or they left some points on the board and everything. So that definitely makes you figure it's like Georgia usually plays a pretty clean game, I would say. So that's usually where it's like, okay, how many breaks can TCU get from Georgia in that case? Again, not to foreshadow too many things, but yeah, like Michigan just their heads were not in this game. I felt like, and just made some bonehead plays overall. So, but yeah, like going back to I think that rushing attack and everything from all that conversation about Michigan just running through them. I think I was looking at some of the stats earlier. Is like if you take away that 54-yard rush like from Donovan Edwards, it was like 39 rushes total afterwards actually for 132 yards, which not too efficient. That's like 3.4 yards per carry. So not the best rushing afterwards. So I think after that they're like, all right, let's fill in the gaps, make sure our gap control is good for the run game, and evidently, yeah, that all worked. So and yeah, and then they just kind of relied, I guess, on Michigan and killing themselves here. So yeah,
I thought there was a good quote by Mozzie Smith from Michigan, probably going to be in the first 2 rounds of the draft. He basically said, that's uncharacteristic of our defense to just kind of let them walk up and down the field and score on us. And I know there was a 2 pick sixes, but in the same sense, if you're a top 5 defense in the league and maybe playing a team in the a non-power conference or whatever TCU has been up against this year, I just kind of found it as like a shock that Michigan allowed that many points to kind of fall on them. So, yeah, I mean, outside of, the Michigan touchdown that was kind of taken away, I thought his knee was down, prior to goal line or what have you. Seemed like ball was over, but yeah, in the same sense, I feel like they definitely came up short, where they probably shouldn't have.
I think it's hard, man, to Max Duggan is he's a good enough thrower. I don't know that he's like an elite thrower of the football. I mean, I think he actually led the Big 12 in passing yards, so he's clearly a good thrower. Like, do I think he's a C.J. Stroud or a Bryce Young throwing the football? Probably not. But he's a really good runner and almost built more in that kind of like a Tebow light style. And I think sometimes you just take for granted how hard that is to defend. Because it's like, all right, if he drops back to pass, you probably got to have somebody spying on him, right? So that changes your defense. And if they go to run the ball, it's like an extra ball carrier, right? Where typically a quarterback would be handing it off, and now this guy's the runner, and you can use your running back or fullback, whoever you got in as a blocker. I just feel like that's almost like, to a certain degree at times, it's almost like you're playing with an extra guy on the field, or you're making the defense do something different. It's just really hard to stop. It's like, hey, we're going to run right up here and, off tackle, like good luck stopping it because we got an extra blocker. I just feel like it's tough for defense to handle, and he's a hard-nosed, like really good quarterback. So
yeah. And when he like Quinton Johnston, I think there was that 76-yard, pass or a touchdown from him. Like I think it was in the 4th quarter. It's like, yeah, how do you kind of account for all that? So it's like, okay, we're getting towards the quarterback, and then he just creates like enough time, kind of like almost like Ben Roethlisberger, right? What he usually did is just create enough time to get out of the pass, and then accurately pass it to a receiver, and then let the wide receivers make some plays there. So he's really good at that, and I think that'll definitely be a key thing for Duggan and TCU going forth. But when you do have that weapon like Quinton Johnston, like you got to get the ball towards him, and when he can get out of sacks and stuff like that, it's so hard to defend that. So
not to mention TCU amassed about 500 yards on offense, and it was completely balanced between the rush and the pass. Maybe a little bit more run heavy in that sense, but that'll put your defenses like heads on a swivel if you're constantly checking down the quarterback for any sort of draw plays. But in the same sense, if he's going to beat you deep with Quinn Johnston and their cast of characters, it's like I'm sure it just gave him fits all night.
Yeah, I did want to call out before we move on to the Georgia and Ohio State game. I did want to call out all the haters that we had on the last video. I think we kind of like, I know we chose like Michigan versus Georgia and all that, so we got one of those wrong. So I won't be completely all be a saint about this whole thing, right? But Michigan, they weren't all that. Sorry, they just weren't all that. And we got a lot of trash for, like, oh, you guys are just homers or whatever for Georgia and stuff like that. But like, hey, look, they're not in the game. Michigan's not in the game. So, Just wanted to point that out there. So, yeah.
So
Did we get some
hate.
Michigan feedback too? I saw there were some Ohio State guys on there. Was there a Michigan guy? Were there Michigan guys?
There was everybody but TCU, I think.
Gotcha.
Hey, but we did get a Kansas State football player follow us, so I wanted to point that out too. So maybe
nice.
they were happy that TCU's moved on when they beat them. So maybe they'll give them some sort of consolation type of victory there.
Yeah.
So I guess moving on to the big game, at least in this circle here, Georgia ended up with 42 points, Ohio State 41. Definitely an uncharacteristic, I would say, performance from Georgia. I don't know if the game, would have been scripted that way had, most fans written it, but I got to pass it over to Taylor. I want to hear his take on that game because literally sitting through it, I constantly felt like it was, falling out of grasp. And then, some big plays happened and, momentum definitely swung and they won the game. But Taylor, what did you make of this start to finish? What are some things you want to point out?
Yeah, man, I had so many things go through my head. I think just kind of going through it, chronologically, I think in the first quarter, it was or the first possession, Georgia got the ball, drove all the way down, and it was frustrating as a Georgia fan to see this. Stetson Bennett, very rarely does Stetson Bennett pull a zone read, and we didn't get it, and he pulls it on third down, and the back just had a wide open lane for a touchdown, and then Georgia misses a field goal, right? So it's like, oh man, when Ohio State's going to score, very important to get points, even if it's only 3, get 3, but you go from feeling like there was going to be 7 on the board to nothing. I thought that was pretty big. And then, Ohio State gets the ball and they're tearing it up. I think they score and the Georgia comes back and ran a nice wide receiver. It was actually to the running back, but he was out on the side as a wide receiver, comes back and ties it up. Yeah, man, just such a back and forth game. I thought Ohio State did a really good job of protecting CJ Stroud. And when he didn't get protected, he just did a good job of avoiding the rush. Georgia had a lot of guys coming up the field fast, and he kind of avoided them. And then once that happened, you're in kind of scramble play, and it's really hard for a DB to cover a guy, for 5 or 6 seconds, particularly when you've got receivers like that. They also ran some really nice protections, I felt like, on the Ohio State side. I don't know if you guys remember this. They'd kind of roll Stroud, not like completely out of the pocket to the right, but he'd kind of roll back to the right, and then he'd throw all the way across the field to the left. And I couldn't tell if it was a crosser or like a guy coming back on the opposite side of the field. But just kind of sitting between the corner and the safety, and you're throwing all the way across. And if you get protection on that, it's just hard to stop. But yeah, so I thought Ohio State, played a really good game. CJ Stroud, the guy just killed it, right? And I don't know if this is encouraging or discouraging, but you go back and look at the highlights, and it's, well, you're getting a touchdown thrown on you, but it's like, oh man, he just stepped up, avoided the rush, and kind of scrambles out to the right. It's like, you don't take that away, right? It's a legitimate play, but that, to me, that's a little bit different than just running the ball down somebody's throat or just standing in the pocket and throwing it. Give CJ Stroud a lot of credit, right? It was incredible. The guy made tons of plays, whether it was just moving around in the pocket, scrambling like that. Yeah, I felt like he just played the game of his life. Honestly, still watching the highlights, I have no idea how Georgia won that game. I was talking to my brother during the game, and I don't know, man. There's just something about, I feel like, and I think I told you guys this on the other podcast when we were talking about it. Just like the culture that I feel like Kirby Smart has built. You look at that and you're like, well, culture's not a wide receiver. Culture doesn't throw the ball. And I feel like Georgia's culture won that game. I know that probably sounds super weird, but just kind of following the program and listen to the things they do. Like, this sounds like almost cheesy, but they literally have a composure card, right? That like everybody has it. They'll show it to Kirby, show it to players. So if somebody's kind of getting too amped up or frustrated or whatever it might be, it's like, hey man, you're losing your composure, right? And they'll literally, like, players have shown it to Kirby in the game. And I just use that as an example of, I just feel like this team just seems to have this like sense that we're always in it, right? We're in it together. I know they haven't lost a game this year. They could have lost plenty of games, but it just seems like there's never any panic. Even in that game, I don't know, man. Part of it is that. Part of it, I do think there was just some fortunate breaks. You look at that, it's like I was telling somebody the other day, I think there was 3 kind of key plays, probably more than that, but 3 very out of the norm key plays in the second half. One was Kirby calling that timeout on the fake punt. They were absolutely going to get that fake punt when they ran it. I think another one was Brock Bowers just being superhuman and somehow not touching out of bounds and going down before he got that first down on 4th down. I mean, if that happens, Georgia doesn't kick that field goal and they're down 14 still in the 4th quarter. And then I think the third one was when Stroud somehow scrambled and lobs that ball that I think everybody thought was going out of the end zone. And Javon Bullard just laid the wood on Harrison, which not only broke up the touchdown pass, but then I personally didn't feel like that was targeting, but the targeting got overturned. And then, I mean, you hate to see it, right? But he knocked him out of the game too, which like, you can't dismiss that. It was a huge play just for all 3 of those reasons, right? No touchdown, targeting getting overturned, and you knocked their best receiver out of the game. But yeah, man, just such a back and forth battle. And I think when Kirby came out of halftime, he had mentioned, they said, what was your message to the team? And he was like, win the 4th quarter. And I went back and looked, and Georgia won 18-3. Like, think about that game and winning the 4th quarter 18-3. So, yeah, just like no quit. But yeah, give credit to Ohio State. They just destroyed Georgia with those receivers and crossing routes, and Stroud played out of his mind. In the 3rd quarter for Georgia is just awful, right? I think they started with 2 3-and-outs and just had no momentum. I think Georgia could run the ball earlier, so they tried to start running it, and they got in that predicament, right, where you run on first, you get stopped, you run on second, you get stopped. Then everybody knows you're throwing on 3rd down, and it's hard to throw it. But yeah, it was a hell of a game. Obviously, like I did have a dog in the fight, but I mean, anybody who watched that game had to just, it was reminiscent in some ways, at least, from just the overall emotion and like the way the game went. Less back and forth, but it reminded me of the Rose Bowl with like Baker Mayfield and Oklahoma versus Georgia back in 2017. So
yeah. I think Stroud, I think, played as good of a game as he could. They didn't have, I don't think they had any turnovers, right? I think like every team in the football playoffs had some sort of turnover, interception, or fumble or whatever, but except I think the Buckeyes. So they played as good of a game as you possibly can. But I think the key thing for me, was Marvin Harrison Jr. getting knocked out of the game. Like, they did not have an answer. Like, Ringo could not keep up with him. Like, when CJ Stroud extended the play, right? So and I think they got 2 touchdowns out of that. So it's like, that was a big time. That was a big moment for them when that happened. And played as clean of a game as possible. But, Georgia, like you were saying, I think it was like, it might've been after the game. I think he said something like, said something better. He can play better. Something like that along those lines. So, it's definitely like that idea of like accountability and then composure too. Like I think you were mentioning. So very disciplined team, and they don't really hurt themselves too much. I know Bennett had that 1 interception, but after that, he really bounced back. I think he played a much better second half, obviously. But then the defense obviously stepped up and ensuring as much as possible that okay, we're gonna make this a field goal a little bit farther just in case at the end there. And sure enough, once that clock hit 1200, the new year and everything, I think the ball just kind of said, all right, this game's gonna go to Georgia now. So yeah.
And I would just say kind of reminiscent of, watching the Warriors Celtics or Patriots Falcons in the Super Bowl. Is kind of like, I felt like the more talented team, was Georgia in this matchup. And I think, like you guys were saying, you take Marvin Harrison out of the game. They didn't come into it with Njigba, and they're doing about 70% of their offense through the pass. It's like you take away 2 of your top weapons against like one of the best defenses in college football. It's like, you're probably not going to score a whole lot after that point. But in the same sense, I felt like there was some really big momentum swingers, especially the Arian Smith, 70-plus yard touchdown to kind of kick off. I believe it was the 4th quarter. Obviously, the last play of the game to Mitchell was huge as well, with kind of the clock expiring too. The missed field goal was obviously very big, but it kind of just felt like the right team ended up, picking themselves up, maybe abiding by those composure cards, maybe kind of refocusing, getting into the 4th quarter and just showing their strengths where they needed to be shown, as the game was kind of closing out. But I think the one thing I was thinking about when we were previewing this matchup was thinking about CJ Stroud having to have the game of his life. And I'm pretty sure he did that. And, it still wasn't quite good enough. But I don't think we can put a lot of blame on Stroud. It's just, you're going up against the best team in college football, in my opinion. So in that, he played really well. His stock has risen. But in the same sense, I feel like, Georgia, sealed the game and, walks in the national championship, I think, with a lot of just insights to pull from. I think there's a lot of, lessons they can learn from a game like that. And, we'll see where it goes, facing TCU here coming up on Monday. So with that, maybe turn it back to you, Taylor, but at least setting up the national championship game, we can break down both teams if we'd like, but in the same sense, like a prediction would be great. And just like to hear your thoughts kind of walking into this championship game, how you feel about it in this matchup.
Yeah, I guess a lot to say. It's interesting. TCU, I guess the first thing that stood out, I know they run like a 3-3-5 defense, 3 down linemen, 3 backers, and 5 DBs, which is a little bit different. I do think so. Georgia's played Mississippi State, who also runs a 3-3-5. I'd heard that maybe the way that they run their 3-3-5 is a little bit different, but I thought it was important that you've kind of faced that earlier in the year. It's almost like playing against a triple option or something from the defensive side. It's like you probably want to have a little bit of experience with that in another game, and I feel like that's a big deal. That they've already played a team that runs 3-3-5, and then Kent State, who Georgia played earlier in the year. I don't know if it's their base package, but they've run a good bit of 3-3-5 as well. So I think just kind of understanding, where folks are going to be on the field is, it's not a normal defensive alignment. So I thought that was a big deal. Man, I guess in looking back at the game, and I know TCU, very balanced offense. That one of you guys had mentioned that earlier in terms of their rush and pass. You look at the Ohio State game, right? And they ran the ball a little bit, not much. And the only times they really had success were when CJ Stroud was either scrambling or running to the outside. Like every play that they ran up the middle, with the exception of that 2-yard touchdown early on, I think, to go up 14-7, everything was running to the outside. So I feel like the way that TCU runs the ball, the way that Max Duggan runs the ball, right, kind of more of that power game. I'm just going to be very interested to see if it's like, hey, that's what Georgia wants to just stop that, right? And teams have thrown on them, but nobody's really run the ball like that on them. So I think that it's just going to be interesting, right? It's their strength kind of versus Georgia's strength. And I haven't seen anybody been able to do that against Georgia. So I think it'll be interesting to see if they can. I personally don't think they're going to be able to line up and just run it that way. I think that's Georgia's strength, particularly, just with the D line and the 2 middle linebackers. I think they're weaker in coverage than they are in the rushing game. Kind of related to this game, but going back to last game, we had talked about, and I probably named 5 players that they came from Georgia because these guys just got me excited. But one of them, I don't even remember, Pat and Wayne, was A.D. Mitchell, right? Because he had been out, I told you guys, most of the year. And I think you kind of saw he is that elite receiver for Georgia. There's some other guys. I do think McConkey's a very good receiver. He's different, though. I feel like A.D. Mitchell is in that class of, I'm not saying he's as good as Marvin Harrison, right? But he's in that class of an upper elite receiver. I love Lad McConkey. I don't know that he's there with, Ibuka and some of those other guys like Ohio State had. So I feel like getting him back was huge. You saw him make the touchdown catch at the end of the game. He had kind of a crossing route early on that was big to get a first down. And then I was going to mention as well, Arian Smith. He's kind of not in a negative way, but a bit of a boomer bust player. He's just, the guy probably hadn't had 20 catches in his career. And then you see him catch I think he had 3 catches for 140 yards, in that game, which was just massive, particularly the touchdown at the end, when Georgia was down 11 to score that quick, I think with 6 minutes left, was just huge. Cause even if Georgia scores, they had to put a longer drive together, that would have been big. So anyway, I think that getting A.D. Mitchell back, getting Arian Smith, he was hurt a little bit earlier in the year, but some kind of feels like he's coming around. Will be big for Georgia. What else, man? I don't know. I just don't see the times when Georgia's gotten picked on, not only this year, but even in the past, call it 2 or 3 years, the teams that lit them up were guys that could just sling it around like nobody's business. So it was Joe Burrow, right, killed him. Then it was Kyle Trask, who had a ton of weapons with Kyle Pitts, and I'm drawing a blank on the dude that went to the Giants, who's just an elite receiver too.
Tony,
Yeah, Kadarius Toney, and then it was Bryce Young, right, and then it was C.J. Stroud. Nothing against Max Duggan, like as an overall quarterback, I think he's really good, right? Your second Heisman, like unbelievable leader, like really good college QB. I don't know that he's as good of a thrower of the football as those guys. Again, very good thrower of the football, but like he's not Joe Burrow, he's not Bryce Young, he's not C.J. Stroud to me. And those are the guys that have really lit up Georgia. I just feel like when you get a really good receiving core and you get a really good quarterback that can throw it around, that's when Georgia's been susceptible. TCU's got some really good receivers. They've got a good quarterback. I don't know that he's that next level of a thrower, which is why I feel like if they can kind of shut down the run game a little bit and force them to throw the ball, I don't know that TCU can do what we just saw Ohio State do. Heck, I don't know that honestly any other team in college football could do what we just saw Ohio State do, to Georgia. But yeah, I guess that's my initial thoughts.
And do we have a prediction on the game score here?
Yeah, it's interesting, man, because I look at that, and even going back to the game, it's like, how did Georgia win that game? I don't know. Even till now, I'm watching the highlights, and I'm like, there's no way that Georgia's going to win, even knowing what's going to happen. But you look, and it's like, I felt like the offense left stuff on the field, right? So I look in the third quarter, and you have 2 3-and-outs, right? You look on, when Stetson Bennett tries to throw that wheel route, and he throws a pick, which if he lobs it over the defense's head, could have potentially been a touchdown with the running back streaking down kind of the sideline on a wheel route. So you look at that and you're like, man, I personally feel like Georgia left some points on the field. And it's like, you feel like they left points on the field and they scored 42, And so it's like, man, the offense is rolling. You just win against arguably the best. The defense just went against arguably the best offense in the nation, and they put 41 up. I know TCU put 51 up, and every one of those points is legitimate, but they weren't all scored by the offense, right? So you're like, well, 14 of those were on the defense, so they put 37 up. I just feel like, I don't know, man. I think Georgia's offense is going to be able to score almost at will. I just feel like they're really good and rolling with some of those receivers they've got back. A lot of the backs have come back too. Kendall Milton, I know we had mentioned him the last time we talked. He was the one who kind of powered it in on the goal line for that. I think it was the second touchdown. I do think TCU will score some, just 'cause I do think they're a good team, right? Everybody's got to give them respect now. They come in and dominate Michigan. But yeah, I guess I'd say somewhere in the ballpark of I don't know, man, call it like 45 to, I just feel like I've been off on my prediction, so I want to give them more points. I'll go 45 to 28, and that sounds like a lot of points at the end, or big point differential and 17 points. But yeah, I'll go 45-28. Georgia.
Sounds like a humble score, but we'll give it to you.
I've got to say, if anybody out there knows the legendary announcer Larry Munson, he was a Georgia announcer, super famous. He was the biggest homer. So this is like, I don't know. He also kind of had this negative attitude too, though. I guess I'm contradicting myself here. But as a Georgia fan, it's like there's always a little bit of something in you where you're like, I can't really pick against my team, But yeah, we'll see. I was obviously off on the Ohio State Georgia game, so take it for what it is. But
yeah, well, the spread, I think for the record, it's like 13.5 or 12.5. So for all the bettors out there, FYI, blame Taylor if you get the score wrong here. So yeah, go over. That's awesome. But I like your take. I think for me it's like TCU. If TCU were to pull something off, right, pull it off, like I would definitely see like Quentin Johnston kind of being the cornerstone towards that. And then in terms of playmaking, because when I was looking at what CJ Stroud was doing and like being able to elongate the play a little bit to free up an elite wide receiver like with Marvin Harrison, I'm like, oh, can Duggan do that with Quentin Johnston against Ringo probably is going to be covering him. Yes, I think that is like where it could be dangerous from the TCU standpoint. And then obviously I think they do got to make some plays maybe not. It'll be hard to get replicate against 2 pick sixes and stuff like that, and all, kind of all the things that happened with Michigan. But if they are to keep in this game, I definitely see. I think Duggan's going to have a big game, but then also Quentin Johnson just because of his elite playmaking. I don't know if Miller is going to be around. Running the ball too well, running the ball effectively, and then also being healthy and stuff like that too. So I just don't see it there. But I think those are the big ones there. I think my thinking is that with this whole 3-3-5 and then kind of be trying to concentrate, I guess, on stopping the run. I think from Georgia, because I think everybody knows, Georgia's there's definitely going to be a concentration to stop the run, against for TCU. So that's where I'm thinking Brock Bowers is going to have a big game. I think that's going to be the cornerstone. Since tight ends, it's they're kind of we block on occasion, but we can catch a pass too and stuff like that. So I know Darnell Washington, I think he's still kind of questionable or something like that in terms of if he's going to be playing or not. So that's definitely where I feel like Bowers is. He's going to step up. He's probably the best tight end in the country right now, right? And that's definitely where I think his skill set is going to be really, really valuable for Georgia overall. So with being able to catch from the tight end position and then also block. So and then do some play action rollouts, things like that. I feel like that's where he's going to be kind of that X factor for Georgia against TCU's defense. So with all that being said, I guess my prediction. You know what? Hey, we just been rolling with Georgia, so let's bring out all the TCU. We got a lot of crap, from Michigan and Ohio State. Bring out all the TCU people on us. I'm gonna go a little bit closer. I have them beating, I guess, the odds from Vegas or whatever. 41-37 is my prediction. First repeat champions since Alabama was about a decade ago. So so cheering on for Georgia, I think to take it all there. So, but beating the spread, TCU will be beating the spread. So I'm giving you all that. So.
You're trying to hedge your bets there, Wayne. If I'm
a little bit.
Spread though.
Yeah, I'm hedging them for sure. So
I'm thinking about this game from the mental perspective of both teams. I mean, TCU just knocked off, Michigan, who was the favorite to walk into the national championship game from that semifinal. TCU kind of shocked the world. I think they were pretty excited. I think in a lot of ways, I don't know the guys in that locker room, the coach, et cetera, in any sort of personal way, but I just feel like Taylor was mentioning for last year's semifinal between Georgia and Michigan, I think TCU walks in this game just happy to be there. I think it's, they've accomplished more than they probably set out for in this year. And I don't think they're ready for the buzzsaw that's going to be coming at them. And I think in the same sense, when you look at Georgia, they learned some really tough lessons. And I like what you said, Wayne, because that's exactly how I think TCU has to play the game to win it. I think they have to go pass heavy. They've got to target Quinn Johnston as their main guy. But I don't think Georgia's going to sit back and not think about that. I don't think they're not going to think about the lessons they just learned having Marvin Harrison, and Stroud do damage on them in that semifinal. So if I were Georgia, I know they like to play the 3-3-5, but maybe have one guy playing man on Quentin Johnson, have some sort of zone or spy coverage where you almost have two guys just trying to neutralize, their main weapon. And when you got Jalen Carter and Nolan Smith up front, I think the run's going to be really hard for TCU to come by. I think, Duggan, as he scrambles, tries to find some room. I think he's going to have a tough time. I think that pocket's going to close. I also think, I don't know if Kendra Miller is ready for the game, but hopefully DeMercado's got some more, legs in him for this final. But, I just think Georgia's got the wake-up call they needed, and they got it in the semifinal. And I think, just overcoming that, really, light a fire underneath them. They want to win, back-to-back championships here. And I think in that, I think their team is very balanced just in terms of how they run their offense too. I think, they had to go a lot more pass heavy against Ohio State, but they were playing from behind. And I think in that sense, Stetson Bennett showed that he can, win the game with his arm. But, I also think once they establish some sort of lead, I think in the first half, I think they'll, probably just ground and pound and, play some really lockdown type defense. So my prediction, I'm going to blow this one out of the water. I put some stuff on, the IG story. I texted Taylor what I thought the score was going to be. I'm going to be a little bit more conservative than that, because I don't know if it's possible to score the kind of points that I was talking about. within 4 quarters. But I'm going to say 56 for Georgia, and I'm going to say 24 for TCU. I think this is going to be an embarrassment. I think TCU is going to be just absolutely just handled and brutally beaten off this field. And I hope I'm right. I hope Taylor gets another sip of the bubbly here for a second championship with Georgia. But really, honestly, I think looking at a lot of the metrics, just how they've controlled the goal lines both on O and D, throughout the whole season, watching them live and then seeing them last year, I just think this is the team of this era, and I think they're gonna definitely show out on Monday.
Hope you're right, Pat. Hope you're right. 56 sounds like a lot, but I guess that's kind of was my point a little bit too. Of you get to 42, right, and then you look and you're like, and that was against Ohio State, so I know that TCU is different. Let's just say even against Ohio State, it's like, how could they have gotten to 56? Like, you got 2 3-and-outs in the third quarter, you got an underthrown interception, and you got 2 missed field goals, one of which was the one that I was just mentioning to you guys on the first drive of the game, that if you hand the ball off instead of keeping it on the quarterback keeper, that's a touchdown, right? So that's 7 right there. So 56 sounds like a huge number, but I mean, just look at the way these games have gone so far, 41, 42, and then 40, was it 45 or 46 to 51, like they've been huge high scoring games. So, and I do think, and Kirby's mentioned this, the later you get into the year, like defense just doesn't tackle as well, so I don't think it's a coincidence that we're seeing these super high scoring games. So.
And just from my perspective, that semifinal between Ohio State and Georgia kind of felt like the national championship game. And now you're going up against TCU. It almost reminds me of like in the NBA when the Western Conference was dominant. It was like whatever the Western Conference finals were, like that was the Super Bowl, or that was like the main draw. And then it was like, oh, whoever the Eastern Conference is going to throw out there to represent. It's like, I just get that vibe from TCU, and it's no disrespect, honestly, but it's just, I think they're just completely outmatched.
Man, I hope you're right. I do feel a similar way, and I know there's been other big bowl games where you've had kind of an underdog coming in. And I think most of the times when you've had the underdog coming in, it's like, I don't remember what year it was, but like Utah played Alabama, right? And it was in the Sugar Bowl, and Alabama was in the Sugar Bowl, but that was kind of a disappointment for them. And for Utah, it was like, this is their national championship. And so they beat Alabama as an underdog. It's hard for me to envision any team, even if you're an overdog coming to even if you're the favorite coming into the national championship and just being like so overly confident. Does that make sense? Like if you're coming in and you wanted to win the SEC and go to the national championship game, and you didn't win that and you go to the Sugar Bowl, you're a little disappointed. Another team would be, super excited to be there because it's one of the best bowl games I've ever been to. I just can't envision a scenario where the Georgia players are just so overconfident that they're going to dominate TCU. We can sit here and talk about it. We're not in the locker room telling them that. I feel like the coaches at Georgia, and I mentioned this last time, it's like, I feel like they've done a really good job of treating every week individually on its own, new opponent, always giving respect, whether it's Samford, TCU, Ohio State, Kent State. And so, yeah, I don't know. I know everybody out there is outside of Georgia fans is going to be pulling for TCU, and they're the huge underdog. And if I wasn't a Georgia fan, I'd pull for them too. But this is the national championship game, and it's just hard for me to envision Georgia. I'm not saying TCU couldn't somehow win, but it's hard for me to envision a scenario where everybody's picking Georgia and they came out overconfident and just didn't perform. So.
Yeah. Who's your offensive player of the game, would you say, to watch for Georgia in this game? Who do you think is going to light it up?
Man, I feel like you talked about it earlier, and I don't want to say he's underutilized, but Brock Bowers is a freak of nature, man. And I just feel like what he can do sometimes in those like linebacker matchups and things like that, particularly if you can get some of those receivers going and, particularly on downfield stuff, right, where you saw Arian Smith kind of loosen things up in the previous game. A.D. Mitchell's back full speed. I think that starts to open things up a little bit more. You can't key on a guy like Bowers. And yeah, I do actually feel like even though he wins the Mackey Award as the best tight end, that guy's so good. I almost feel like he's underutilized, as I guess is what I'm getting at. You look, and they even commented on it in the game. They're like, where's Brock Bowers? Where's Brock Bowers? I just feel like he's due, man, to have one of these big breakout games. So yeah, I'd go with Bowers. But it wouldn't shock me either if Kenny McIntosh, the back, just with what he can do, not just running the ball, but he's an elite receiver. Mm-hmm. And so, you saw him take that. He lined up in the, on the outside as a receiver and takes that wide receiver screen in. I mean, I could see him having a big game both from a rushing and passing or receiving standpoint.
And Taylor, you could run circles around me in terms of knowing that roster, but just to see 10 guys catch one pass in the semifinal, have 3 guys basically split carries, not including Stetson. It's like there's just so many different options. There's so many different avenues. It's like the greatest show on turf for college. It's like we don't even have to talk about maybe one breakout star. It's like I just think TCU is going to be so confused by what they throw at them, and it's just the talent's there. It just feels like it's pretty overwhelming in that sense.
Yeah, this is probably going down another path, and you guys can cut it out if you want to. But I just like I think it kind of goes back to the culture piece that I mentioned too. You talked about 10 guys catching a pass. It's really easy to stick around a program if you're the main dude and you're getting all the attention from the wide receiver standpoint. But you look in that game and you obviously follow them better, so you guys probably don't know all the stories behind it. But like Dominic Blaylock, who's actually Mookie Blaylock's son. You remember the Mookie Blaylock, the point guard? From the Hawks. I don't know if you remember that guy. Anyway, he was a good NBA player. That's his son. He catches this out route for Georgia. He's a receiver. You're talking about 10 receivers catching it. You got a joke, Pat. Go for it.
No, it's a stupid joke. Everybody's played NBA Jam since.
Yeah.
Blaylock was in that trio for the Atlanta Hawks.
Exactly. He's lobbing it up or you're passing out to Steve Smith for 3-pointers, or he's definitely lobbing it up to Dominique. I'm assuming Dominique was in that one. But yeah, so he tore his ACL twice. The dude didn't play football for something it was over 2 years. And to see a guy like that stick around in the program, come back, and then he's making, I think he only had 1 catch in that game, if I remember correctly, on the sideline. Or a guy like Kearis Jackson was injured too, was a mainstay in our receiving core 2 years ago. And then Lad McConkey's ahead of him, but a huge team player, just it's not about me. And he catches just a massive, I don't know if you remember before the game, the go-ahead touchdown to A.D. Mitchell. He catches that bomb down the middle, kind of between the safety and the corner. So it's just you see these guys over and over again. It's man, when dudes like that stick around the program and they're clearly good players, they could go somewhere else and play a lot. It was just awesome to see in the day and age of a transfer portal when you're talking about 10 guys catching a pass. It's if you're the 4th receiver at Georgia, you could definitely go to a little bit of a smaller school and be the man. But I think it kind of just shows what I was talking about, right? The culture of, no, we want to stick around and it's not about me. And, even Marcus Roseby, Jack Saint's another guy. He's probably caught less than 15 passes all year, pass across the middle. And he's even mentioned it doesn't matter if I'm catching the ball or I'm blocking. It's just whatever I can do to help the team. So I didn't know it was 10 receivers or 10 people caught passes in that game. That doesn't surprise me. So, yeah.
And Darnell Washington caught 1 pass for 9 yards, and we're looking at a first round talent, at tight end. It's it kind of just blows your mind. It's an embarrassment of riches in a sense.
Yeah. He got, when you mentioned it too, he got his foot stepped on by our guard, and so he didn't play for a lot of that game. But Kirby keeps things tight to the vest, and so or close to the vest. I don't know if he's going to play. But that was another thing that's impressive for me, right? Brock Bowers comes out, you put in a true freshman tight end. It's you would typically look at that and you're I just think the way that Georgia's built depth, to lose a star is one thing, but then to replace them with a true freshman, for a lot of teams, it'd be oh man, that's a lot to overcome against a team like Ohio State, to not really have a drop off there.
I think I remember he had a key block for a touchdown run or something like that. So I don't even know who the guy was, but it was that's a good block from a backup tight end or whatever. So
yeah, Oscar Delp. I think he chipped on that JT, whatever his last name is, and kind of sealed the edge or something, if I remember correctly. But
yeah, to come in cold like that, just put on a great block because I'm a stud tight end, a 3rd string tight end from this. But yeah, you're who's in front of you? Oh, 2 NFL caliber tight ends, 1st, 2nd rounders. So yeah, it's pretty crazy.
Yeah, for sure.
So I guess with that, I don't know if there's any more thoughts you guys want to put out there for this game or for college football overall, but I guess I'll just ask you guys first off.
I can go first because I want Taylor to have the last word there. But first off, it was a great decision to have finally or to have the college football playoffs. I know it's been several years since it started, but I just remember back then, when Boise State would go undefeated, and then we would have those questions that we were kind of having with TCU now, right? Now those questions are being kind of solved. It's you have this Cinderella type of football team from not to call, I guess, the the Big 12 or whatever, like some sort of mid-level type of conference. But then it's like, now you get to have these stories kind of be told out now, like underdog versus a juggernaut. So I'm very excited to think about this game overall. And then if Georgia does become the first repeat champs and everything, like, wow, it's gonna be maybe I'll be join the bandwagon. So I talked about not having like an official college football team and everything, but I guess I'd have to jump on the Georgia bandwagon there if that's the case. So yeah.
Is this the final thought just about the game, or is this the final thought that you dropped the corn dog stand on me last time? Because that could go two different ways.
So I wanted to first close out the college football before the final thought. So, Wayne, I'm
going to have to make that decision. That's a tough decision for me to make. You got football, but then you introduced the most delicious corn dogs to me on earth. So I didn't want to have to decide between the two. Your comments are spot on, Wayne. I do agree with you. I remember like college football used to be so anticlimactic, right? Towards the end of the year, it was like all the regular season games matter. And then it was like, well, we get one national championship game. Having these semifinal games just built up so much more momentum and interest, and has changed this whole like, well, that team got screwed out. They shouldn't have been in there. I mean, even this year, everybody would have said TCU is the one that doesn't deserve to be in. Well, now they're playing in the national championship game. And maybe somebody out there is saying, well, Alabama got screwed, right? But it's a different argument to say, well, Alabama got screwed at 5 than somebody got screwed at 3. Does that make sense? It used to just be the 3rd place team got left out. Now it's the 5th place team. So I feel like that argument is a little bit lessened. It's like, well, you shouldn't have lost 2 games, But so it's been awesome to see that. I will say if that holds true in what you're talking about, I'm going to be both excited and pissed because I don't want Georgia to become like the Alabama bandwagon. You're going to have everybody wearing gear and stuff. Then I'm going to be like, I'm a Georgia fan. It's be like, hold on, don't call me out now. Somebody's going to be like, you're a bandwagon fan. I'll be like, dude, no, I'm not. I'm the furthest thing from a bandwagon fan. I'm not wearing the gear. I'm just suffering. I've been suffering for 41 years before last year. I put in my time. So I almost want like them to win. It's like, how do you let them, I don't know, how do you establish a dominant program but still have that hunger and fight and stuff? But
I was gonna say it's like a band, right? It's like a band. Like once it's like, oh, I discovered them when they were like an indie band. Now they they've made it and everything. Like, oh, come on, all these posers and everything. So
exactly.
Yeah, it's kind of like that meme with Argentina, winning the final. It's like, I've been an Argentina fan since December 2022.
Exactly.
In a lot of ways, I feel like, just finding that one team that's riding it hot. But I think like Wayne, I've become like, let's say a casual bandwagon fan of Georgia, probably just through Taylor, just like kind of seeing the excitement and kind of hearing your stories from last year and then kind of going to the game this year and stuff. Like, I like rooting for South Carolina, and my fandom is kind of growing slowly as we've left the program and stuff. But I've never truly had, outside of Northwestern, who's never really had like a national championship run or anything like that for me growing up. But with pro sports being so dominant in Chicago, it's been nice to watch Georgia take these steps in the last couple of years. So it's just fun. Just for you, I hope they win another title here and bring you a lot of joy and stuff like that.
No, I appreciate it.
Yeah. Well, I was gonna say, I would appreciate if you give us Jalen Carter and Cedric Van Pran Granger, because we need both. The Bears do. So
yeah, man. Well, I guess I don't know if this is a good thing or not. You kind of got. I don't know if he's obviously not a Georgia guy from where he left off last, but Justin Fields, right? He started his career at Georgia, so
yeah. That's right. Yeah.
Ironically, he was there at the same time as Stetson Bennett. If that'll just blow your mind.
Yeah. Although, I think he did cheer for OU. I believe. I think they the Bears media were like, "Hey, who are you cheering for?" And then he just like dropped down his helmet, I think, and then he just went like, or OSU or whatever, something like that. So yeah,
I get that. He had to do that. Yeah.
Yeah. Playing to his alma mater that entrusted him on being the quarterback. So
right.
I just think a great recap of what's to come here on Monday. Looking back at the semifinals, two great matchups. So we'll close out college football for today and go around with some final thoughts. I think I pushed it on Taylor last time to kick it off, so I'm gonna actually shift it over to Wayne to give us a final thought here.
Geez, final thought. I mean, I guess for New Year's resolutions, I know that was kind of a big thing. I know it's been talking the works. It is like January and everything. So I guess one of my New Year's resolutions, apart from growing the pod, right? Probably just to travel more. I think I'm debating whether to go to New Orleans or go to like Mexico, and then I'm also maybe looking at going to like Switzerland or something like that. So yeah, I think it's just nice to get out there and see the world a little bit. We've been kind of clustered, I think, for the past couple of years. So yeah, might as well see the world a little bit. Especially I guess when the dollar's a little bit nicer than some other currencies currently. So but yeah, I think good to get out there and yeah, grow the pod too. I think all that could be fun and love what we're doing here. So yeah.
I had a bit of smile on my face just because you said Mexico, and Taylor and I live there basically together, and with a cohort of about 15. But I think there was a group of 5 of us that really.
I was gonna say, you guys have stories, huh?
really turned it up. And
that could be a whole nother podcast in and of itself.
Yeah, I'll just say this, Wayne. We were there to learn intensive Spanish for basically 5 months, and in that process, I think we learned more Spanish staying up. Probably to 2, 3, 4 in the morning. 4 to 5 nights a week. I don't know, depending on the crowd you were running with any given week. But that just brings back a ton of awesome memories. And we definitely pitch Puerto Vallarta, Guadalajara. And if Taylor has anything more to add, I would just leave it there.
Okay, I was gonna say yeah. I was looking at Puerto Vallarta, so yeah,
that's a lot of fun.
Yeah. Okay, cool.
Yeah, I'm thinking of what I can add that's like. would need to be taken off the podcast. Not that it was just a lot of good times in Mexico. Yeah, I don't know. I always have fond memories there, particularly just hanging out. There was a group of 5 of us that are like super close even to this day, and we all kind of didn't even have it coordinated. We just all kind of ended up in Mexico together, and yeah, it's a cool experience. I think I guess my thing that I would add is, it's just different to travel somewhere versus like live there, and you just get more of a feel for it. It's like, like talking to people from Mexico. I'm like, oh, I lived like in Guadalajara, like in Minerva. And they're like, what are you doing there? Like, it's just cool just to be on the ground and live that sort of thing. But yeah, was that your final thought, Pat, or are you coming back to it?
I've got a completely final thought. But yeah, I mean, the only story I think is a good one that's pretty much PG, but just getting the university that we went to basically comp a trip for us to Puerto Vallarta, staying at, a hotel resort. All of us, I think we spent like a good long weekend there or something. Taylor, please, correct me if I'm wrong, if I'm missing any details here, but this whole trip, we all had these orange wristbands on, and for whatever reason, we never really put it together that the orange wristbands, basically had more than just, hey, I'm at the resort. So essentially, I think we were kind of ordering drinks on the last night, and I think I went to my wallet to pull it out because I basically just had a drink or whatever, and the guy's like, "Wallet, like put that back," and I was like, "Why?" And then he's like, "Wristband," and I was like, "Wait, this whole time I could have been having free drinks in Mexico for like the last 3 nights, and like we'd been going out to like bars, restaurants, clubs, whatever, like just not spending a ton of money, but in the same sense of just like." This whole time we had this like treasure chest right here. And after that point, everybody kind of in tune, like understood they all had wristbands, and it was like everyone's just double fisting the entire night. So it was just, partying by the pool and stuff. And then, the next day, we all kind of woke up, especially early, because I think they opened up the bar in the AM or something like that. And I think our bus was like leaving at noon. And for about 2 hours, I mean, everybody was just double fisting like the entire morning. And I think a quote came out of it. It's just, it's never over, I think was the main, takeaway from that trip. It was just
it did. You're right. But did you know where that came from though? At some point the next morning, and I don't know if maybe they did let us drink. I didn't remember it exactly that way, but I know that Christian came up and our other buddy, and he ordered something, and the guy was just like, "It's over," and just like grabbed his hand and like snipped the wristband off of it. And it was like the disappointed look on his face. And so now we always have this quote. It was just like, you don't take that away from us. It's never over. So now, like, whenever there's something else where we're out together, like when I went to visit Pat in Virginia, and we were out and taking a few tequila shots, we like sent a video to the guys, and we're just like, this shit is not over. It's like 11 years later. So anyway, it's just become this joke of like, it's never over. Anyway.
I would say it's like Yogi Berra if he was like, drinking in Mexico. Like, I think that's like what he would say, right? So that's awesome. So you guys didn't know you stayed like an all-inclusive resort? Is that what I'm hearing? Like you didn't calculate or whatever?
Correct me if I'm wrong, Taylor. Like
I
seriously,
don't remember that specifically. Yeah. I will say this: that there's no judgment here, but like I know that like Pat and our buddy Chris and Will all live together, and so I don't know, like just in terms of like drinking and going out, they may have done that more than I did, if that makes any sense. No judgment, right? You guys were, a few years younger, and just taking advantage of the time there and stuff. So I don't remember missing out on the drinks there or anything, but I'm sure it did. I do remember going out to the clubs and God, some funny stories, particularly about other people in our class. But
no, I mean, my understanding of the wristband was like, this is yours to like come out of the resort hotel. You don't have to go to check in. And then the other sense was just the food. I think I kind of understood like food and buffets would be comped. So it was like, I think where I was lost is like, hey, this whole trip was comped by our university, and our university just like paid for like an all-inclusive, like all you can drink, all you can eat, like type setup. Like it just didn't register because I like never thought that would be the possible, the kind of the outcome of being put on a class trip or something like that. So different country, different rules. So glad that those rules were bent in many different ways throughout the time that we were there. But now for sure, good times. And Wayne, if you go to travel, check out Puerto Vallarta. Guadalajara was a lot of fun, much more mellow, I'd say, comparatively speaking. Yeah. But I thought the Lucha Libre stuff was a lot of fun going out at night. And then Taylor, you like live downtown, but if you had anything to share, about that in general, if you wanted to, but those were my takeaways really.
Yeah, I don't know, man. It was just cool, like living downtown and stuff, like you said. If I was on vacation, I probably wouldn't go to Guadalajara just because, it's like the city and you can't really, I mean, there'd be cool stuff to do, but I just feel like having the beach around is built-in kind of entertainment and stuff. What else? Yeah, it was cool. I like living in Mexico. I remember the Lucha Libre stuff was fun. And I guess Sundays where they shut down all the roads. That is one thing I miss about, I guess, a lot of other cultures, not just Latin culture, but even like going to Europe and stuff. You just see all these like plazas and stuff and people are out with their families. I feel like a lot of other countries do it right. Whereas Americans are like, I'm going to meet you at noon. We're going to eat for an hour and a half and then we're going to go home and do nothing. I'm like, man, it's not about the food. Don't get me wrong. Like I love food, but like, just kind of hanging out and chilling and, being out with family and friends and stuff. Sometimes I feel like we miss that here in the US. It's not all about like where you're going necessarily. It's like, just go and chill and hang out,
Yeah. Instead it's like going to the farmer's market and getting like 5 different kinds of cheese or something like that. Like that's a goal for a Sunday for some people. So
yeah. I miss those. Like, I guess I did it less probably in Mexico, but just like the Latin lunches, like in Brazil, it'd be like from 2 to 5. I wouldn't even have to eat dinner because it'd just be like this like 3-hour lunch on a Saturday, and I loved it. But
because I was definitely on the fence, like, should I go to Mexico? I mean, New Orleans is a little bit cheaper, but I don't know. It's like I feel like now I got to go to Mexico now. So yeah.
Gotcha.
Taylor, did you have any final thoughts?
Unrelated to football. Yeah, Wayne, you actually like set me up for this a little bit with your New Year's Eve thing. And it kind of goes along with your New Year's resolution thing, not New Year's Eve. I guess it kind of goes along with my podcast, not to throw another plug in there, but I kind of started following this dude on Instagram and I really liked the stuff he was throwing out. And so I signed up for his little daily reflections, I guess they're called. And so you definitely made this one hit home for me, Wayne, because talking about like what you wanted to do this year, but the one that he sent, I think it was today, was what if this were your last year on earth? What would you prioritize that you've been putting off because you believed you had more time? So yeah, I think we all do that, right? But like,
go to Mexico and get drunk. Yeah, that's.
Well, I especially think that's true now with the whole DeMar Hamlin situation. I feel like the first few days of my work week, and maybe you guys felt the same way, but like, I feel like football entertainment really brings like a tragedy, to life. It hits home a lot harder, I feel like, when it's just so much in the public eye. But, think the guy was just making a tackle and, shoulder, hit him pretty hard in the chest and almost, possibly ended his life for minutes, hours, whatever it was. And now, I'm glad to see that he's, coming back to life. I personally, if he never plays football again, just to have him alive is probably one of the better outcomes of what's happened to him. But like you're saying with your quote, I think that really like hits home for me in terms of like making sure you're doing everything you need to do to, live a satisfying life, however you define it.
Not for sure.
And for me, basically outside of what you guys are talking about, this can be completely irrelevant, but found this Daily Show IG clip from Roy Wood Jr. I don't know if you guys have seen anything circulating from the Daily Show on Instagram, but go check this out. I was in tears laughing because I really love flaming hot food, a lot of the snacks and things like that. And this guy just goes on a complete dissection and kind of like satire about flaming hot food, and basically laughing at like, now there's flaming hot cereals, there's flaming hot candies, and like, why on God's green earth would you create flaming hot Mountain Dew, for what it's worth. So I don't know, I was just kind of cracking up to myself, like, it just kind of hit me because I'd say like flaming hot Cheetos are my favorite of the whole collection. But I did want to ask you guys, are you flaming hot fans? And if so, which products do you like? And would you try any of this crazy stuff like the cereal, the candy, or a Mountain Dew?
I mean, I'm all for the flaming hot Cheetos, but for me, I feel like that's just max. Like everything else is just great. Like what? Flaming hot Mountain Dew? Like what is this? This is ridiculous.
Yeah.
I feel like half of it, I think half of it is like just marketing gimmicks. It's like the fact it's like, oh, that sounds interesting. Maybe I'll try it once at least, and then I could just to say I tried it, but I don't find that appetizing one bit. Like, so, to your point, Sarah, of like, is this something that I'm going to regret? Like, if this was the last year of my life, no, that would not be it whatsoever. Not trying flaming hot Mountain Dew or something. So anyway, yeah, I think flaming hot Cheetos, that's good enough for me. Some of these other things, I feel like it's just all gimmicky. So yeah.
Yeah, I do really like spicy stuff, and I tend to go with like more of the real foods with my spicy stuff. I'm definitely not saying I'm not a spicy Cheetos fan. I do like that. I just try not to keep that around the house because I've got enough other things that allow me to keep my weight up, and I don't need snacks like that around the house. But yeah, talking about a spicy Mountain Dew, like I don't know if you've ever like drank spicy stuff, but like it kind of just goes right through you, and I don't know that I would want to deal with the after effects of that. Yeah, that sounds terrible, to be honest. I think the spiciest thing I've drank is like a ginger ale, like a real ginger beer with ginger in it. And that's a different kind of spice than like than the flaming hot sprinkles or whatever.
I guess like I've had a Bloody Mary that's like extra spicy with jalapenos, whatever else they've could possibly add to the mix or whatever. But I do think like just having like two very synthetic products just like coming together in one drink, like I just feel like heartburn is like probably the least of your concerns in that sense. And it's just like, I like where Wayne's going though. It's kind of like, I feel like Doritos, PepsiCo, whatever it is, has their hands on like all these different snacks, all these different options. And like sooner or later we'll find it in our like, Hostess cakes or something like that. Or maybe in our paper towels, we'll have like flaming hot paper towels that just like, burn your face for whatever reason.
I mean, I was gonna say, could you imagine flaming hot toilet paper? I feel like that would be
a great white elephant gift, man.
I gotta say, Pat, I can talk about me not wanting to drink that at all, but if I'm back there again and you get your like annual night out and we're taking tequila shots and you fix me up your 5 corn dog plate with a little glass of spicy Mountain Dew, I'm absolutely going to take that down. So
that sounds awesome. I will make a plug though. If you guys have never tried this, try it. At my high school, this was like the rage, but there used to be dollar bagels with a cream cheese. And then we'd buy 50-cent bags of Flamin' Hot Cheetos, bagel and cream cheese, toss those Cheetos on there, make a sandwich. I'm telling you right now, just do it. Do it in the privacy of your home. Don't report back to me. I don't, doesn't have to go there. But you'll enjoy that.
All right. I got to tie this back in then. You were talking about Mexico. You did just make me remember this. Do you remember what Will called his Frito thing before I explain it? You know what I'm talking about though, right? Our buddy Will would buy a bag of Fritos and then he'd go to in the gas station, right? Or something, or like a convenience store. And then he'd go to the line where it had the hot dog and he'd make chili cheese. So he'd squirt out like all the yellow cheese into the bag with chili and he would have like legitimate chili cheese Fritos.
I mean, that's super legit. And I also remember the bag of potato chips where they just basically take like Valentina's hot sauce or whatever it was and pour it over the top of this plastic bag of potato chips and then squeeze like all this lime in there. And like, that was awesome, man. I would do that here. Valentina's isn't sold at the grocery stores out here for whatever reason, but
Gotcha.
and there's a lot of like secret mashup gems. I feel like they're just floating out in the universe.
I mean, I think it all makes sense. Like it's like you're mixing fat with like hot, right? I think that does mesh, like, you know, yeah, from like the culinary standpoint. So whether it's flaming hot Cheetos and cream cheese or, you know, some of these other things we're talking about. So I get it.
And you just got the lime, like adding, you know, that
Yeah.
acid, like over, like just a little acid in there. Like, why not?
Yeah.
I think the Food Channel will like definitely pick up this pod now.
Yeah.
I feel like it's starting to, yeah.
It's,
No,
it's
just
like
feel
astronomy. Yeah.
No doubt. Well, I think we've spent as much time talking about final thoughts, old stories, fast food, etc., than we have the national title game coming up here on Monday. But great show. Always glad to have Taylor back. Again, if you guys are out there, Constant Quest on Apple Podcasts, subscribe, review. Please do the same for us, Ball and Breakfast Podcasts. We're on, you know, Apple, Google Podcasts, Spotify. If you want to find us on Instagram, I'll post some stories up, plugging a lot of this stuff that we've talked about and you know, the episode ahead. So looking forward to Wayne putting a lot of these mashups together for the videos and reels and stuff. And you know, we'll talk to you guys soon.